Hello, welcome back to Intentional Grounding, our weekly football podcast.
Podcast. Podcast, coast to coast. Tyler has been removed from the hosting.
This is not being edited out. I'm sorry, I'm keeping this in.
I am Tyler Spittle, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Mike Woodard and Costa Vienna.
Tyler Spittle or Tyler Spottle?
What?
Never mind.
Boo.
I tried.
Can we kick Mike out now? And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the preseason schedule and some of the interesting matchups that we see. So, Costa, how about you start us off? What do you think about the preseason schedule then?
Well, after taking a quick kind of glance over at some of the matchups, I mean, there were some of them that stuck out. I mean, week one, you get, San Francisco visiting Baltimore, which the Harbaugh factor, that's really pretty much all that is, and you get a, I guess, Super Bowl rematch type of deal. But there were some others. I think week 4, the Jets play Philadelphia, so Vic will be back in Philly for a game. And really, other than that, there really weren't many other games that stuck out because right now, since the draft hasn't happened yet, a lot of these matchups could be far more interesting depending on who lands where. Like we were talking about earlier off air that, for instance, if Johnny Manziel gets drafted by the Houston Texans, in week 3, the Texans play Denver. So you get, Johnny Manziel up against Peyton Manning. That'd be a very interesting game to watch, in my opinion. I think that would have potential to be one of the highest rated preseason games as far as like viewership goes. So it's just like things like that you have to wait for to actually decide whether or not the preseason, because really the preseason is only interesting to see the new young rookies play.
That's true.
So I guess you kind of have to wait for some of that stuff to unfold before you can actually say which games in particular are going to be the most interesting to watch.
Right. And honestly, too, just like you said, it is more fun to watch all the rookie players. So, but if we were to look at, how the team's rosters are constructed or the closest they would look at game time, you got to look to week 3.
Well,
that's going to be the most interesting action. And some of these, I think, would be, kind of fun to watch. It'd be fun to see the Redskins versus Baltimore because,
Well, that's every preseason.
Well, right, but what?
Or no, wait a minute. No, they haven't played since 2011, but in the preseason against each other, right?
Normally, yeah, that's what they would do. But I'm saying, though, to see, the Redskins, roster, see their offense, This should be RG3's, he'll get to play into, the third quarter as long as they actually let him play a preseason game. So it would be interesting to see their offense, to see Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. And then you got, New Orleans versus the Colts. I want to see the Colts, I think they have a very good chance to, be another playoff team next year. And I think they will. And so that I think is some interest to me. It's kind of interesting to see the Jets at Philadelphia in week 4 because the battle of the backup QBs.
We'll see. Who knows?
Sanchez
like I said, there's always that chance that Vic could end up taking over the job. In which case, he might not even play a single snap against the Eagles in the preseason.
And that's true. Yeah,
and
he could.
Then all of a sudden, that game feels a lot less interesting at that point.
That's fair.
But who knows if Vic and Geno Smith are still kind of competing for the job. Then maybe they both play a couple of snaps in that game just, to give Rex Ryan a larger sample size to make a decision. But, again, I think I do agree. I do like the New Orleans and Indianapolis matchup in week 3, Luck and Breeze.
And especially with the New Orleans, the way that they have their defense constructed right now, that'll be something interesting to watch. I'm excited to see Kenny Vaccaro and Jerry Byrd together, That would be interesting to me.
What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, Tyler, why don't you?
It's and of course one of the things with preseason is that a lot of these are only shown in their television markets. There's only a handful of the nationally viewed games, and that's what I found. I think most interesting when some of these came out is because, like one of the things, for example, I'm always used to at least one Ravens game being nationally televised. Whereas this year, none of them are. And then you have like games like Jacksonville or Chicago that's getting nationally viewed. And so like when you're saying about like the whole ratings thing of like for example Houston at Denver, like that's not a national game, so that'll only really be shown in those markets. Then maybe some re-airs on NFL Network.
Okay.
But for week 3, the national games are going to be Oakland at Green Bay, or New Orleans at Indianapolis, San Diego at San Fran, and Cincinnati, Arizona. And Cincinnati, Arizona could be cool because it's going to be Carson Palmer playing his old team, and possibly with with Arizona. Of course, it's all becoming a what these teams do in the draft, like Costa said.
Mm.
I mean, I think honestly the NFL is taking a gamble as far as like what teams get to play on the nationally televised preseason games, like Jacksonville and Oakland, for instance. Like they're both teams that are in positions where they're like, honestly, the two players that everyone's going to want to see the most during the preseason are going to be Jadeveon Clowney and Johnny Manziel.
Mm-hmm.
And, Manziel could go pretty much anywhere in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, you see 100 different mock drafts, and each mock draft has them pretty much going everywhere except for, I guess, like Tampa Bay and St. Louis.
Right.
So, Detroit also wouldn't be a landing spot. But yeah, pretty much every other team in the top 10 is a potential spot for him to go.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's Cleveland or Jacksonville or Minnesota or Oakland, Houston, so I think they have that mindset where we want to make sure we have all of our bases covered. We want to make sure that Johnny Manziel's in at least one of these nationally televised preseason games. So they're going to give all those potential suitors
that is a good point. Because except for the Houston,
Denver, which is I don't know what they were thinking. Why wouldn't they make that one the nationally televised one? Why wouldn't?
That is weird.
I mean, yeah, okay. So Houston, so you'll more than likely get to see Manziel against Manning, or you'll get to see Jadeveon Clowney, try and give Peyton Manning hell.
That's true.
Yeah.
That'd be very interesting.
So
I mean, as interesting as preseason can get.
If you want to see a preseason game, you're gonna watch it in week 3.
Right.
Which
the other games are just they're the games that you have on. Like if you're doing something else, you're typing away at the computer, you just listen to it in the background, like especially if it's not your team. Unless it's your team, you're probably gonna watch your, if I was a Cowboys fan, I'd be watching the Cowboys, whole game because I want to see how the backups do. I want to see, who might make it onto the roster, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, from an entertainment standpoint, you can only go so far in preseason, unfortunately.
Well, one thing that they've done this year they haven't done in past years is they're having matchups during the preseason that will happen again during the regular season.
They've had it in previous years.
Yeah,
but it doesn't happen that often though.
Yeah, and usually they avoid it, but like this year they're actually making it front and center with I believe it's not one of the national televised game, but Seattle at Denver is the first week of the preseason, which is a bit odd because they're not only scheduled to play sometime during the regular season, but that was predicted to be the opening season matchup.
Right.
And so some people are taking this to believe, oh maybe that means that for a reason they're not going to be the opening matchup because
I still think they'll make that the opening game of the season. Like, why not?
I don't know. I don't know how much I'd like this because that's the last. Because a lot of people who watched that Super Bowl, and I know, Tyler, you liked it when you initially saw it because you were rooting for the Seahawks, but if you just wanted a good football game, you were left with a really bad taste in your mouth because it was just like, okay, it was all this build-up for nothing.
But
so then it's like, I feel like they should do something different to change it up.
Also at the same time, though, it's like, do you want to... Because Denver obviously is reloaded during the preseason. We've discussed that plenty of times already. So, but do you want to risk having a matchup later in the season, or maybe one of the let's just say by chance, whether Seattle or Denver isn't necessarily performing up to expectations, then you risk the game not drawing as much interest. Or maybe someone gets injured. What if Peyton Manning gets injured? What if Russell Wilson gets injured?
Well, you always run that risk.
You always run that risk, but if you put the game in week 1, if you make it the opening game of the season, there's less risk of that happening.
Yeah. Like, for example, at that point, the Ravens-Patriots game last year, that was a game that was like highly, expected to be the home opening game. Of course, the Orioles kind of screwed that up.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it happened later in the season, it even got flexed out of its spot, of its primetime spot.
Because the Ravens underperformed,
Yeah.
and it loses interest. So, people, because of how much Denver has done to improve, and and Seattle's team has pretty much stayed the same. Not a whole lot has changed on their side. So,
but then why would people expect the difference to be that great? If Seattle is the same team, Denver, they improved their defense a little bit, but their defense wasn't the one coughing up the football and turning it over and giving the other team points.
Honestly,
and the only thing they changed on the offensive side was they got rid of Eric Decker. But Eric Decker was invisible in that Super Bowl anyway, so he was basically not on the team during the Super Bowl.
Well,
so how did the offense change in any way? They didn't.
Well,
And
Emmanuel
you
Sanders.
can maybe make the argument that maybe they got worse because Emmanuel Sanders never put up the numbers with Roethlisberger,
Well,
Decker
he had
did,
a couple of big games. He's
right, but not on a consistent basis.
well, because Roethlisberger Manning spreads the ball around a lot too, but but Roethlisberger, more between Heath Miller and Antonio Brown, and they had 3 running backs, and so did Denver. Denver had a few running backs, but.
And especially just like how you said, Seahawks didn't really lose anything, so how do we expect them, why do we expect Denver to play any better? Is it Denver, and it wouldn't be at Denver, it would be at Seattle, right?
Right.
Yeah, it would be at Seattle, where Seattle is notoriously tough to beat. They only lost 1 home game last year? And that was late in the season when, wasn't it? It was the Cardinals who finally ended their home winning streak near the end of last year. And that was when their offense had fallen off a little bit. And I would, if they do put that in the prime time, yes, I'm going to watch it no matter what, and it would be interesting. It would be a little interesting, but I would go into it with a cautious optimism, and I would let's just hope they don't fumble the snap on the first play of the game.
Who else? Hey Tyler. Well, do you mind looking at what's the Seahawks' home schedule? I don't think they'll give the Seahawks one of their divisional matchups because outside of the 49ers,
that would be more interesting to me for a week 1 matchup. Because the 49ers were the team who were bounced out of the playoffs by that last minute play.
Right.
That is more interesting to me.
So their home opponents, besides Arizona, San Francisco, St. Louis, they have Dallas, Giants, Denver, Oakland, and Green Bay.
Now,
Green Bay would be an interesting pick.
If Manziel ends in Oakland, I also give Oakland. I'm just saying purely by, again, because the NFL knows where the interest lies.
But the schedule's coming out before the draft.
Is it officially coming out before the draft?
Is that official now?
Well, that's what I've heard. Is that it's still the schedule is still expected. Well, the schedule's always come out before the draft.
Well,
always.
but
it's always been the week leading up to the draft, and this time it's the week. It still is the week.
It'll probably be around the 22nd.
Well, then if they decide not to give it to Denver, Seattle, then my vote is either for San Francisco or Dallas.
I would say either San Francisco or Green Bay. Because the rematch of the Fail Mary,
Oh yeah, Fail Mary.
Yeah, did we all forget about that? Come on, guys.
Kind of.
And that game was actually at Seattle, so that'd be very interesting, very compelling.
Yeah, the only other thing I could see is either Dallas or Giants just to hook on into those big markets.
Yeah, but I don't think that draws enough like national interest though. Like you need to, which is why I'm saying. I mean, I guess if they want to make Denver later, like maybe middle of the season, just so there's a larger gap between the preseason game and the regular season game. But I think Denver and San Francisco, one of those two matchups would be the ones that I think would benefit the NFL the most. I mean, granted, like I agree Green Bay would be a good matchup as well, but
I also think that the first game coming back from the season should not just be a direct rematch of the game that ended the last season. Even if it wasn't a blowout and a complete boring game, like I would still want something different to kick off the season. Like after who was it? The year that the Ravens did go to the Super Bowl. It was Green Bay versus Saints, and that was like the playoff game rematch or something? Remember, or was it something like that? I don't know. But anyway, my point is, I would rather see a playoff rematch instead of a Super Bowl rematch.
Well, Ravens Broncos kicked off this.
No. The year. I'm saying. The season before. The 2012 season.
Yeah.
What was the game?
Giants and Cowboys.
Oh, was it the Giants and Cowboys? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, never mind. I'm thinking of the year before.
Yeah, because that was the first year that the defending Super Bowl champions lost.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah.
Since they started that tradition.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? I don't want to see the same two teams that I had the last memory of the season, especially since the last game of last season was boring.
Well, I mean, obviously, when the schedule's released in a couple weeks, we'll talk about that, and
granted,
then we'll get to.
Granted, I will concede that you're probably more on what's going to happen. I'm just venting about what I wish would happen.
Well, right, but unfortunately, since like I said, the NFL is all about it's getting as much exposure and getting as many viewers as they possibly can. And while I think Seattle and Green Bay would have potential to draw in a decent number, just because I think of what people around football fans around the country would care about, my vote: Seattle, San Francisco, or Seattle, Denver. Okay. Regardless of preseason matchups or whatever.
Yeah, my vote would go to Seattle, Denver first, and then Seattle, Green Bay.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
That's fair enough.
All right, and so although we started this out talking about the preseason, we ended up talking about Seattle's home opener. But that's just how we do it here on Intentional Grounding.
Yeah.
So for more fun, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at Intent Grounding.
Yay.
Good job.
See y'all next week.
Yep, see ya.
Bye-bye.